Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Request for Interest web meeting. This is Rebecca Bencini with the Port of San Francisco. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm joined in the room with Michael Martin, the Deputy Director of Real Estate and Development, and also Amanda Straight, who is the Port's outreach consultant. We're very excited you joined us, and I just wanted to give you a brief orientation on how the morning is going to go. We're going to talk at you a bit, and I apologize for that, but we have quite a number of people who signed up for the web meeting, so we've decided that we need to have this be a broadcast-only mode call, so we'll be talking to you. Hopefully you've all logged on the phone, obviously, because you're listening to me. But also please log on to the web meeting if you're at a computer. I put up the meeting number and the code here for your reference, the same as the one you used to dial into the phone today. You just need to enter these numbers and enter your email address and your name. During this web meeting, we have the ability to see your chat to us, as some of you have started to do already. Thank you for doing that. Please chat to us and feel free to send them along to the host. You can send them to everyone, but then everyone will see your question, which is okay if that's the way you'd like to do it. And during the presentation, we'll be pausing for questions that are particularly relevant to slides, and we'll pause to answer those. We'll also hold those until the end if there are questions that we think would be more appropriately answered at the end. We'll also be recording this PowerPoint and this audio and posting it to the website later in case there are others who'd like to see it. We'll also be posting all of the questions and answers in written format. And I just received some chats that people are having a little bit of trouble with the audio. We're just going to pause for just a second while folks who are on the web meeting log on to the audio. We'll just wait one more moment. It looks like folks are attempting to log on to the conference call. We have quite a number of people who have logged on. Just for your reference, if we were all in a room together, we received about 60 responses to this web meeting by a mix of operators and occupants, including folks from the arts and culture industry, the maritime industry, food and beverage, entertainment, technology. We also received requests to join the web meeting from developers, capital providers, architects, engineers, brokers. Also community members and community organizations are represented. So if we were all in a room together, there'd be quite a dozen of us sitting together from various parts of the industry. So it appears that we're getting, most people are logged on to the call. I'm sorry if you can't hear. Please keep trying. We have quite a number of people who are able to hear. So we're going to keep going with the presentation. A brief overview of what we'll be presenting will give a bit of an orientation on the Embarcadero Historic District in case you're not familiar with the area. We want to go over the objectives of the RFI. I want you to have some background on how we came to issue this RFI. We'll have a bit of a presentation on the 14 facilities, and then we'll go through sort of key points of responding to the RFI, which is open until October 31st. We are really excited about the Embarcadero Historic District and additional investments in the site. Just wanted to give you a little drone view of the area. We view it as a very special place. If you haven't had a chance to visit, it forms the edge of a breathtaking urban form of the city. There are sweeping water views available from the promenade, from the piers themselves, which typically jut out about 700 or 800 feet out into the water. Millions of people come to the waterfront every year for employment, for transportation, for exploration, entertainment, for recreation, or just to passively engage with the bay. The diversity and color of these experiences, which are connected by generous public open spaces and stunning views of the bay, are what really makes the waterfront, in our view, a unique and world-renowned attribute of our international city. The Embarcadero already has quite a number of wonderful places. This RFI is really seeking concepts for more wonderful places. The objective of the RFI is to find implementable, public-oriented concepts that can help support historic rehabilitation. And all of these words are kind of carefully selected by the team. We want to have all of these elements, if at all possible, with the responses that we ultimately get and the partners that we ultimately select. I wanted to take a moment on the concept of public-oriented. This was really a phrase that the group who worked on through the public process to update the fourth Waterfront Land Use Plan, which is our primary long-range planning document. This phrase was adopted during that public process, and it sort of came to mean, we made up the definition a bit, I would say. We defined it as a use or an activity or an attraction that invites the public in particular, into our historic facilities. There are some examples shown on this list of what we had in mind when we came up with this phrase, but this list is neither exhaustive nor prescriptive. Part of the objective of the RFI is to help us know what we don't know, what we haven't thought about. So this is our list. We're interested to see what list comes out of this RFI process. As you're contemplating getting involved with the port in a partnership or responding to this RFI, it's important to know a little bit about the organization. The port is a public enterprise department, which means the port derives our revenue from leasing property under our jurisdiction, which is unlike a lot of city departments that are typically funded by general or special taxes or fees. The port's mission statement states a number of balancing acts that we're committed to doing, which is balancing maritime, recreation, industrial, transportation, public access, and commercial activities for the benefit of the public. It's also important to note the legal framework that really defines how we manage our property, the 7.5 miles of shoreline under the port's jurisdiction. You'll hear quite a lot about the Burton Act, passed in 1968, and the Public Trust Doctrine, which dates back to Roman law. The Public Trust Doctrine holds that the public should have access to public resources, natural resources, such as waterways. So that's one item that is sort of our touchstone as we contemplate how we should manage the property. We manage about 800 acres of land. We have more than 500 tenants and about 20 million square feet of building space. I mentioned the Public Trust Doctrine a bit earlier. It's a legal framework that's been evolving over, can I say centuries? I suppose I can say centuries. And it evolved to respond to changing needs. Most of the piers, or all of the piers we're talking about, were built more than 100 years ago. They no longer serve their original purpose, which was for cargo shipping. That declined quite a lot a couple decades ago. Meanwhile, while these original purpose characteristics have kind of declined, we have over the years put forward and completed with our partners historic pier rehabilitation process or projects that have been very successful, but along with all the ones that have been successful, there have been many others that fell by the wayside for a variety of reasons, but some of those reasons were financial feasibility challenges. So recognizing this with our public, with our partners at the State Lands Commission staff, we've defined kind of collectively a new set of public trust objectives, which are listed here, that are tailored particularly to the Embarcadero Historic District piers. So the 6 criteria that you see on this slide were what this group put together as items we'd like to maximize to the extent possible for any particular project that comes into these piers. And the RFI is really the opportunity to test the market on how and which of these criteria are most viable and which can be best achieved depending on the types of projects that come forward. In putting together these criteria, the sort of authors, we all recognize that each project will achieve any of these criteria in a different manner. and then it'll be up to the Port Commission and the state land staff and the commission to kind of evaluate the weighting of each criteria and to balance all of these objectives. As a very brief, as sort of an illustrative achievement scale, I put together the idea that maybe a project would achieve low or high on any one of these criteria. Wanted to note that the RFI is really one of the key objectives is historic preservation. So any of the projects that we anticipate coming forward, that would be an objective that we would really want to see maximized, with the other criteria being balanced to the degree possible.
So I'll step in now. This is Mike Martin, Deputy Director for Real Estate and Development. The next few slides are meant to sort of give a little bit of the background of how the Port is coming to this process and how we're hoping to manage it forward to create some really implementable projects that really can improve the situation for these historic piers. So starting with this slide, I really like this depiction of the Embarcadero Historic District in particular, just because you can see it from north to south as really enveloping a huge swath of the downtown San Francisco environment. And as we showed in the earlier video, it's really a unique intersection between the stunning beauty and the sort of recreational attributes of the Bay on one side and the financial center of the Bay Area on the other. And so we see this location as being a real driver for potential land value that can translate into actionable investments that really will hopefully save the piers and improve the piers for future generations. This area sees 5 million ferry passengers a year, over 300,000 cruise passengers annually, approximately 25,000 people every Saturday attend the farmers market, more during the summer, as I found out a couple weeks ago. It's very much a crossroads for the Bay Area still, with all of the transit nodes that are nearby, and we think this is a great place for a public-oriented use to really have access to the public. So, why partnerships? I think the Port is in a position where, as noted by Rebecca earlier, we are an enterprise department, so we need to make money need to earn our dollars that go to fund our budget, both in terms of capital and operations. And because so many of our facilities are the age that they are, our ongoing capital need as assessed by our engineering department greatly outstrips the resources we have to pay for those capital needs. So the Port really needs to look at other ways to bring in dollars to address just the upkeep of our facilities. In addition, as depicted at the bottom of this slide, we have on Port property along the Embarcadero the great seawall of the city, which was built over 100 years ago itself, which is meant to sort of be the city's edge as we filled in the lands that were in the original shoreline depicted in the yellow dotted line on the slide. As we found over time, this seawall is not seismically strengthened enough to deal with the next big earthquake. We have great concerns about liquefaction for all the property that's behind the seawall, and so as many of you already know, we have worked with the city to put a ballot measure on the ballot for this November that is seeking an initial set of funding to start analyzing and addressing how best to shore up the seawall, primarily for seismic risk, but also with an eye towards sea level rise protection. We're also working closely with the Army Corps of Engineers, who's also interested in investing in this area as an area of federal interest. So again, I think the major upshot of this slide is the Port has great capital needs and not a great set of resources to address them. And with these resources on the Embarcadero Historic District, we want to be more creative and see if there are ways to bring in private dollars to move in coordination with our public dollars, including the public dollars going to the seawall project. Obviously, there'll be some coordination challenges there, but we think these initiatives can sort of reinforce and find synergies where we hopefully can improve not only the individual piers, but the seawall and the waterfront behind them. The Port has a track record with these public-private partnerships. They are not easy. Having worked on several of them in the past, I know that each one has its own challenges, and obviously takes quite a bit of time, as does most of the development process in San Francisco. But we are proud of a number of the successes we've had, specifically in this Embarcadero Historic District. Depicted here on the slide, we have the Ferry Building, which is sort of the iconic center of gravity of the district, improved with a public-private partnership and reimagined as a market hall for the entire Bay Area, with ferry docking next door and an ever-growing set of activities focused on that location. We also have depicted the Exploratorium at Pier 15 in the middle. To the top right, we have Piers 1.5, 3, and 5, which were a historic rehabilitation of those bulkhead buildings just north of the Ferry Building. And then south of the Ferry Building, as depicted to the left of the slide, we have the Polara Foundation space that was also improved through a public-private partnership. I'm seeing a question come across on the last slide about whether we've used any seawall funds for pier foundation improvements. I just want to be clear, we do not anticipate that that's the case. The seawall is a project that will cost in the billions, and we need to devote all the dollars we can to that project. And so ultimately, each pier project will have to be able to be feasible on its own 2 feet, but we'll obviously look at potential subsidy sources to do that. But I do want to be clear that we do not expect seawall-specific funds to be improving the pier foundation.
One note on that, a really excellent question, is the way we think there may be some synergy is that our team will be working on design solutions and different techniques to improve the seawall. So to the extent those can be mirrored in the pier foundation work, we would want to see that integration occurring. One other question that came across while you were speaking, Mike, is whether or not this will be available later. For those avid note takers out there who are trying to capture every little bit of information, this will be available online, and the audio is being recorded as well, so this can be watched at a later time.
That's great. And just to close the book on public-private partnerships, we have also recently completed agreements south of this district for, well, first of all, there was the Orton Development Rehabilitation of Historic Buildings at Pier 70, which is actually being leased up as we speak. And then we also have 2 new large master plan development projects at Mission Rock, which is the former Seawall Lot 237, and Pier 70. So this is something that the Fort has some experience in, but as I said earlier, we definitely know that each one is its unique set of challenges. And so we are going in with eyes open, but we see this RFI process as a great beginning to sort of putting together the business case for why specific public-private partnerships to move forward. So a little bit about the Waterfront Land Use Plan update. I think Becca covered this very well earlier, but this process, this is the governing document for how the Port's lands are used. We initially did the initial Waterfront Land Use Plan approximately 20 years ago now, in 1998, I believe. We are now updating that plan in a process that began in 2015. We convened a significant stakeholder working group, including not only regulatory stakeholders, including our partners at the State Lands Commission, but also, the Army Corps of Engineers and local stakeholders, but also members of the public. And through that series of meetings, I think we created what I would call a new consensus around what is possible and appropriate for this location of the waterfront. I think the working group spoke clearly in its strong desire for more and different public-oriented uses. It spoke clearly about acknowledging the constraints around the public trust and how it makes it hard sometimes to bring those new public-oriented uses to life. And I think there was a great amount of consensus, including with the State Lands Commission, that rehabilitating Port historic buildings, restoring those historic buildings according to the Secretary of Interior standards, is itself a public trust purpose. That these public trust lands along the highlands of California, the way they've been used in the past and the way that we could potentially repurpose these same structures for use in the future is really part of what the trust is all about. And so that, to us, was a door that opened, that allowed us to look at this RFI as a real way forward to say, what is the market interested in doing, and how can we take advantage of this new consensus to bring that new market interest to life. So moving to the next slide to give sort of a super conceptual overview of the process. We're going to follow where the market interest takes us on this, I think is the way to sort of give a headline for this slide. We'll open the RFI process, which is shown in the farthest left orange box. We've opened that. We'll have responses due at the end of October. And then we'll move into a public dialogue, both with the Port Commission, who obviously is who we report to and who decides what to do next with the property. But we'll also go to other advisory group and neighborhood group meetings to share with them what we've heard. We'll post the responses online so everyone can see the source material, and really try to get as much feedback as we can on what is of interest to the public, what is the thing that is most beneficial in terms of increasing the public-oriented use of these historic buildings, and what is it, and the locations in which this makes the most sense the most quickly, let's say. From there, we would move to the third box, which is early next year, after having that public dialogue, we as Port staff would like to propose and recommend a course of action to the Port Commission. We expect that recommendation will include an RFP for one or more piers. We really hope that we'll get enough interest that we'll be able to say to the Commission, we want to devote a lot of our development energy over the next several months to years in really deciding whether or not one of these or more of these can move forward. So that is when we move from sort of an idea gathering process to a real competitive solicitation sort of transactional document process. So from there, I think the decisions we made for each individual pier and each individual RFP to move forward, what that schedule would look like, what the process and the criteria would look like, what kind of uses we're looking for. So I think as we're mapping this out, that fourth orange box is probably going to vary depending on the specifics of the public dialogue. But we would try to move as quickly as possible to get to the blue box at the end, which starts with a selected proposer, moves us through exclusive negotiations on transaction documents, closes those transaction documents and moves into construction, and then we have hopefully fully tenanted and rehabilitated piers. Obviously, that is compressing many years process into a short bullet point, but ultimately we see ourselves as forming the basis for the policy and financial arguments to succeed in that long process. So with that, I'll hand it back to Rebecca to take us through the specific locations we're talking about.
So the RFI asks respondents to select one or more facilities for their concepts. There are 14 facilities if you count the half piers, which I always refer to as the Harry Potter piers. Let's take a moment to review some of the highlights. I will not do them all justice, but I will be brief. Piers 19 to 35 are located in the northern waterfront. The northern waterfront is, you'll see the asterisks show many key tourist and visitor and resident destinations. Fisherman's Wharf, Pier 39, the Alcatraz Landing, the Exploratorium, also our cruise passengers traverse the Embarcadero coming on and off of their vacation vessels. We're also this area is also downslope from Telegraph Hill and Quartz Tower and is served by the historic E and F lines. Focusing on the particular piers, Pier 35 is the most northern of all the piers in the RFI. It's about 170,000 square feet, has all the great location attributes I mentioned on the earlier slide. Wanted to point out for this pier, these little exclamation points means take a look at this particular thing because it impacts its future use. For this pier, any long-term use would need to cohabitate with the current use of the facility, which is the port's secondary cruise terminal. It's also used for special events. So you'd have to have a cohabitation use, or the use would have to have a long-term implementation horizon with occupation of the facility potentially 10 years out. Also wanted to mention Pier 33 and 31. These two facilities form the front door to the embarkation to Alcatraz, where more than 1 million people go to the island each year through that Pier 31.5 wharf area. The Port Commission has recommended that the Board of Supervisors approve the 50-year agreement to keep Alcatraz at this location, which will be heard later on this month. But these two piers have sort of that unique attribute that they form the two sides of where many people travel to Alcatraz each year. Moving on to Pier 29 and Pier 29.5. These facilities are unique because they front or face Pier 27, where the cruise terminal is located. They're located on sort of a triangle parcel. It's the only facility which has ground access all along its 800-foot south face. Moving on to Pier 19, 19.5, and 23. This facility is located next door to the Exploratorium. Respondents can select any one of these piers or could put them together, and it's the largest potential complex in the RFI if respondents had a vision that occupied it's about 308,000 square feet of space. I'm seeing a couple of questions coming through with regard to these slides that I wanted to touch on. The RFI is for all of the facilities that are listed here, and we will not be issuing, or we don't have any plans to issue at this time, any RFIs for any particular facilities. All 14 are up for discussion right now.
And respondents can indicate interest in more than one facility.
Yes.
So you're not pigeonholed to have to choose one. We're interested in getting as much input as we can. And to pick up another question that we've received, the subsequent RFPs would not be limited to any specific proposers. So we aren't using the RFI as a way to winnow down a sort of pre-qualified group of respondents. I think what we're using the RFI to do is identify whether there's interest in specific peers, but then we're going to open it up to the world, even people who may not have responded to the RFI, who may then want to respond to the competitive solicitation.
Continuing along to the central waterfront, the RFI facilities in the central waterfront are in an area that I think is really diverse. It's an area with lots of intensity. Some facilities are very close to the transit hubs Mike mentioned earlier, the heavily used Embarcadero BART station, the city's financial district, the new and the rapidly developing Transbay district. Other parts of the facilities in the central waterfront front, much more residential areas and have quite a lot of open space around them. You see here Rincon Park and Brandon Street Wharf sort of break up the Embarcadero frontage. So there are very, very diverse locations in this part of the waterfront. Focusing on some of the specific locations, the agricultural building, you'll see, looks very different than all of the other facilities. It's a two-story building located at the foot of Market Street, right next to the ferry building, has an incredible amount of foot traffic, as you can imagine, and is now sort of fronting the under-construction downtown ferry terminal expansion, which VITA is building just behind this brown building and will see sort of heavily increased amount of ferry traffic as they're planning new lines there. Pier 26 and 28 also have very great locations. They're a short walk from the new Salesforce Transit Center. They're adjacent to the Rincon Hill neighborhood. They have great access to the waterfront locations I mentioned earlier. And both have these sort of unique embellished bulkhead facades that are different from the northern waterfront bulkheads, which were built in a different architectural style. Moving down to the last three facilities in the RFI, Pier 38 has one very special attribute that I've noticed as I've walked along, and that is its unobstructed views along the northern section of the pier. It has a beautiful view to the Brandon Street Wharf along the entire northern edge of the pier shed. It has this special one-of-a-kind facade, similar to what Pier 26 and 28 have. You won't find these facades on any of the other locations. The short walk to the Giants Ballpark and the South Beach neighborhood and the marina. And just next door to Pier 38 is Pier 40. The original bulkhead of Pier 40 was removed and replaced in 2007 with this more modern facade and the parking lot in front. It's still part of the shed itself. Is still a contributing resource within the historic district, still part of the Embarcadero Historic District in spite of these changes. And Pier 38 and Pier 40 are mentioned as a potential pairing opportunity for large vision RFI concepts. The farthest south facility and the last one on the list is Pier 48. This one also has very special views to the water and to AT&T Park. It's adjacent to the approved Mission Rock project, which is a new neighborhood of about 3 million square feet of new development approved with the port's development partner. It's important to note that the Mission Rock developer has the first option of development on Pier 48, and so any RFI concept would need to partner with the Mission Rock development entity as part of its RFI response. Let's pause for a moment and go through a couple of the questions we've been receiving. Just to be clear, any responses to the RFI or non-responses to the RFI will not preclude responses to subsequent RFPs. We're really using the RFI's responses to help us formulate what the RFPs will be.
I think the question that's come up from a few folks also is, whether, if someone puts in their next great idea in the RFI process, is there anything stopping someone from stealing that idea and competing in the subsequent RFP? And the answer to that, unfortunately, is no. There isn't anything stopping that. I think we have structured this in order to get as broad-based set of feedback from the market as we can. I don't think we're requiring anyone to provide what they feel are sort of trade secrets or things that are their, what you might call the special sauce in their idea. I think there needs to be a strategic decision on responders as to how much information to share. We set up the response structure that Rebecca will go through shortly for the RFI to allow as much or as little detail as you care to provide. And so I think some of that strategy has to be on the part of the responder to say, it's worth it to me to get the port excited enough about my idea to sort of focus its first RFP on this location, but I don't want to share too much and sort of let the cat out of the bag and become non-competitive on my own idea. We realize that the tension, it's not something we have a good way around under our current contracting rules about how competitive solicitations work. I would note also that for actual public-oriented operators of the tenants here, the public-oriented uses like the organizations that already do cultural facilities or already do maritime excursions, etc., there's less concern about losing something confidential there since you're already operating that public-oriented use, and that is as much of our goal to get that input as we are from the broader folks that are looking at how do I put together an entire pier project. So I realize that's not the most satisfying answer to those who think they have the best idea, but at the same time, I do think we'd encourage you to give us some feedback on the RFI so that we have a chance to hear the rest of your idea in the RFP.
Great. I think we'll answer a couple more questions as we go through these next sets of slides, so please stand by if you have, as your question has been typed in. So responding to the RFI, kind of piggybacking on what Mike just said, we purposely made it sort of a low barrier. We have an online application. This is just a screenshot of the opening bit of that online application. You have the ability to start the application, to stop it, and return to it at any point in time. You'll get a link to your form emailed to you once you start the RFI response. There is also the opportunity to email additional information in PDF format if you get a page limit of 10 or 15 pages. So we don't want to, nobody needs to do this, but if you have something put together that you really think is important for us to see that's not captured on the form, then please feel free to email along the PDF with additional information. One question that was asked was whether or not respondents need to select one or more RFI facilities. So you'll, as you go through the form, we do have a place where we ask which facility. You have the opportunity to rank facilities that you're interested in. You also have the ability to note which part of the facility. Perhaps your use is relatively small, but you really need to have it in this or that corner of the building for it to function. So we want to hear those characteristics of your use, if there are particular places along the Embarcadero and particular places within any building. The form has sort of a mix of checkboxes and rankings and free responses. Just some closing words on what to do next if you want to move forward with the process and continue staying with us through the end of October. More information is available on the website. We're kind of updating it as we go. So this online presentation and the audio from this presentation will be posted to the website. You're welcome to sign up for the mailing list. We send out periodic emails as things are updated. So for example, as we put the video up or as we put up responses to questions in written format, we'll be emailing the mailing list. We also have an on-site presentation and Q&A, which is planned for September 13th, which will be in one of the piers along the waterfront, where we'll do an in-person discussion and Q&A. So that's another opportunity for you to learn more about the process. So I think we'll pause for just a moment and review some of the questions we've been receiving to make sure that we've hit on all of the key points. So one question came up about architectural drawings for the buildings or engineering reports. We have posted the architectural drawings for each of the buildings. We do not have engineering or building structure reports available for every single site, but are in an updated format. So we will not be posting those, but we encourage respondents to ask specific questions. And put that in the Q&A, which you can submit online, and we'll be posting written responses to those questions. So to the extent there's a specific question, we'll definitely try to answer that for a particular site. Any other questions? I'm reading them all quickly. Please give me a moment.
There's a question about interim short-term uses and how that affects the RFI, RFP process. So the port, in a number of these piers, has current tenants. A number of them are vacant or undergoing capital improvements. Because, as I noted earlier, we're an enterprise department and have an ongoing set of demands for use of our funds, we will be attempting to lease these piers in the interim to the extent we have appropriate tenancies. And by that we mean something that is fairly short term and we feel like would not impact our ability to implement a long-term rehabilitation project after the negotiations and approvals phases ends in, say, 3 to 5 to 6 years. So we're not clearing out these piers for these long-term projects. It's something we've managed in the past with other projects of how we relocate tenants, etc. We are accepting and will be actively seeking some interim tenants for some of the larger facilities. But again, I think our goal is to do that in such a way that we can move to a cumulative rehab, entire pier rehab as best we can, as soon as we can. So to be clear, we are doing interim leasing, but it does not, to us, run contrary to or impact our goal of getting long-term tenants into these piers.
Another question that was asked is whether or not the RFI responses will be made public. They will be made public. We mentioned that during the process slide that we'll be making them available for court commissioners and then later to our advisory groups or other sort of open public forums. So it's important to note that these will be public information once they're submitted to us.
Yes.
There are a couple other questions that we'll be responding to in written format. It looks like we haven't received any other new ones, but there are a couple that we will be answering in written format, and we'll email everyone on the call to make sure that they receive those responses.
I don't know if you mentioned it, but we will be posting all responses received to the internet, and in support of that public dialogue I talked about earlier that'll happen after that October 31st deadline. So there will be some visibility about what the other ideas are and who else is interested in the peers you're interested in. And in that public dialogue, I think we'll all be looking for where are the linkages, where are the synergies, is there a partnering opportunity, is there sort of a critical mass of interest. And so we're trying to do this as transparently as possible, but we would expect that most of that happens after the closing of the receipt of the RFI responses. But as we noted, we'll be posting questions and answers and other information on a rolling basis throughout this process.
So that's all of our presentation materials. Thank you so much for spending your morning with us. Please feel free to use any of the contact information that we have on the bottom of the slide here and interact with us via the website. And we really look forward to seeing what comes out of this process. This is something everyone at the court who's involved in rehabilitation is very excited about, and we see it as a really great opportunity for us to get investment in this very special and unique place in the city. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.